Good morning. At this time, will sergeants please start their recordings?
PC recording is underway.
Backup is rolling.
Cloud recordings all set. And good morning and welcome to today's remote New York City Council hearing of the Committee on Aging, jointly with the Committee on Economic Development. At this time, would all council members and council staff please turn on their video? To minimize disruption, please place electronic devices on vibrate or silent mode. If you wish to submit testimony, you may do so at testimony@council.nyc.gov. Once again, that is testimony@council.nyc.gov. Thank you, chairs. We are ready to begin.
Good morning. I'm Councilmember Margaret Chin, and I chair the Committee on Aging. I would like to thank my co-chair, Councilmember Paul Vallone, as well as the committee members and staff from both committees for coming together to hold this virtual hearing. The goal of our hearing today is to address an impending crisis regarding the city's various home delivered meal programs and emergency meal delivery programs. As this pandemic continues into its fourth or fifth wave, many at-risk New Yorkers, and especially homebound seniors, are facing a considerable amount of food insecurity. Estimates from the city's largest food rescue organization, City Harvest, place the current number of food insecure New Yorkers at 1.5 million people, an increase of nearly 40% over pre-pandemic levels. A lifeline for these individuals has been the Department for the Aging's longstanding congregate meals, home delivered meal programs, and several emergency food delivery programs that the city established in the early days of the pandemic. These programs collectively offer meals 5 days a week to the city's most at-risk population. In order to qualify for DFDS home delivered meal program, seniors need to be 60 years or older, unable to attend meals in person for health reasons, lack of support system to provide regular meals, and unable to prepare their own meals. The number of seniors needing home delivered meal was increasingly even before the pandemic, from roughly 27,000 seniors in fiscal year 2019 to around 31,000 seniors in fiscal year 2020. We do not have the data for the increase in DFDS home delivered meals during fiscal year 2021, but it stands to reason that there would have been a significant increase during the worst months of the pandemic. What we do know, however, is that somewhere between 25,000 and 60,000 seniors participated in the Get Food NYC program, a $1 billion initiative primarily funding emergency food distribution programs to those who do not qualify for DFDS home delivered meals. Unfortunately, it seems as though Get Food NYC is expiring at the end of this month. And what concerns the committee today is what is going to happen to those tens of thousands of seniors, as well as other Get Food NYC participants once the program expires. DFDS home delivered meal program neither had the funding nor the capacity to accommodate an influx of 25 to 60,000 new senior participants. And it is unclear what is going to happen to those seniors, let alone the private vendors, once the Get Food NYC expires. While some of these seniors may return to the congregate meals offerings at the senior centers as they begin to reopen, many do not feel safe or comfortable doing so while we remain in the grip of this devastating pandemic. I think it is important for this administration to commit to not letting those who need food to fall out of the system, and for there to be adequate funding to accomplish that before the end of the term. The committee look forward to getting more concrete answers to our question today from the Department for the Aging and the Mayor's Office of Food Policy. We also look forward to hearing from seniors and emergency meal service provider who will be impacted by the expiration of the Get Food NYC program. I would like to thank the council staff, legislative counsel Alex Polinoff, policy analyst Emily Forgio, and finance analyst Daniel Krug, Julia Haramis, and Aliyah Ali for all their hard work in putting together this hearing today. And with that said, I will turn the floor over to my co-chair, Councilmember Vallone, for his opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Chin, and good morning, everyone. Good morning, Commissioner Cortez. I think it's only appropriate, Margaret, that you and I, as you started as Aging Chair and I was Senior Center Subcommittee Chair, and along with almost everyone on this panel, we have fought tirelessly for the rights of seniors and increasing the budget. And I know we're in a much better place today than we were when we first started back in 2014. And I think it's appropriate as Chair of Economic Development. So much has happened, Commissioner, since the pandemic over the last 18 to 24 months as we transitioned really from what our jobs were prior to the world shifting to what they are now. And it really became an all hands on deck scenario for everyone in need. And I think the concerns today are that some of those, and basically the $1 billion federally funded program, Get Food NYC, is coming to a close at the end of this fiscal year. And I don't really need an opening or questions to just basically focus on for everyone today, what will happen? What is your vision of that transition when that program closes? What was the role that the Department of Sanitation was in maintaining these new in need folks in New York City? What will happen to those contracts, to those vendors, to the people who are on that list receiving meals? And how can DFTA maintain or keep that up when we all know that the home delivered meal budget is just shy of $42 million? So there is a big gap there. There's a lot of concern from Chair Chin and I and our staffs and everyone on how we're going to transition to prepare for the ending of that program, how we're going to make up for funding, and what happens to the folks that were newly added to the home delivered meals through that program versus the pre-existing seniors and folks in need who are already on the home delivered meal. That really is the crux of our concern today, and how we can hear your vision to guide us through that. That really is the $69,000 question for those who remember the show and what the $69,000 question was referenced to. But for Margaret and I, that is really what our focus is, and for everyone who's listening. And we're hoping to hear that the administration has a plan to make that transition, will increase the budget, and what will happen to the data that was collected and the folks that are newly, and you know what, with winter coming and uncertainty at our doorstep once again as to what's going to happen with the next wave, we may need to quickly have to transition once again to the folks who are already on this list to getting those home delivery meals once again. With that said, I'd like to thank truly the staff that's been with me from day one, my legislative counsel, Alex Polinoff, my former senior policy analyst, who has recently left us for the administration side, and we wish her well, and we miss her already, Emily Forgione, our finance team, Daniel Krug, Julia Haramis, and Aliyah Ali for all their hard work, as always, for putting this hearing and all the previous hearings together. With that said, I'd like to turn the floor over to our moderator for the day, Committee Counsel Alex Polinoff, to go over some of our procedural items. Thank you.
Thank you, chairs. My name is Alex Polinoff, counsel to the Economic Development Committee of the New York City Council. Before we begin testimony, I want to remind everyone that you will be on mute until you are called upon to testify, at which point you will be unmuted by the host. Members of the administration who are testifying will not be muted during the question and answer portion of the administration's testimony. I will be calling on panelists to testify, so please listen for your name to be called. The first panelist to give testimony today will be Lorraine Cortez Vasquez, Commissioner of the Department for the Aging. The department's Chief of Staff, Edgar Yu, Chief Operating Officer, Michael Ognebene, and Chief Financial Officer, Jose Mercado, will be available for questioning. The Director of the Mayor's Office of Food Policy, Kate McKenzie, and Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Sanitation, Bridget Anderson, will be available for questioning as well. I will call on each of you shortly for the oath, and then again when it is time to begin your testimony. During the hearing, if council members would like to ask a question of the administration or of a specific panelist, please use the Zoom raise hand function, and I will call on you in order. We will be limiting council member questions to 5 minutes, which includes the time it takes to answer those questions. Please note that for the ease of this virtual hearing, we will not be allowing a second round of questions for each panelist outside of the committee chairs. All hearing participants should submit written testimony to testimony@council.nyc.gov if you have not already done so. The deadline for written testimony is 72 hours after the hearing. Before we begin testimony, I will administer the oath to the administration. To all members of the administration who will be offering testimony or will be available for questioning, please raise your right hands. I will read the oath and then call on each of you individually for a response. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee, and to respond honestly to council member questions? Commissioner Cortez Vasquez.
I do.
Chief of Staff Yu.
I do.
Chief Operating Officer Ognebene.
Yes, I do.
Chief Financial Officer Mercado.
Yes, I do.
Director McKenzie.
I do.
Deputy Director Anderson. The Deputy Director on mute.
I do.
Thank you. Thank you all. Commissioner Cortez Vasquez, you may begin your testimony.
Commissioner, if I could just jump in and announce the council members who are present. So we have council members Koo, Rose, Powers, Jonai, Dinowitz, and Councilmember Brooks Powers who are joining us. And as additional council members jump in, we'll announce them also. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairperson Chin and Chairperson Vallone and all of the members of the Aging and the Economic Development Committee. As you know, I'm Lorraine Cortez Vasquez, and I'm the Commissioner of the Department for the Aging. And your staff has already introduced the other individuals who are here to prepare to answer questions in support of this testimony. I would like to respond to both the overarching question. We believe that we have a very sound transition plan, and we hope that through this testimony, we'll be able to address some of the questions and concerns that you expressed in your opening statements. But first, I would like to give some background information just to level set, because I never assume that everybody knows exactly what we do and why we do it. So the Department for the Aging has always worked to eliminate ageism and to ensure the dignity and quality of life of older New Yorkers, the diverse older adult population, and also the support of their caregivers through service, advocacy, and education. We have been deeply committed to helping older adults remain in their homes safely and actively engaged in their lives and in their communities. DFTA's priority became even more critical during this public health crisis. Chief among them was first combating food insecurity, also maintaining social engagement for tens of thousands of older adults, as this was critical to not only the mental health, but the health of older adults, and also securing uninterrupted access to critical services, including meals for older homebound individuals. Addressing food insecurity is also the foundation and the creation of the Older Americans Act. Through this Older Americans Act, we've supported and funded congregate meals at older adult centers and homebound, home delivered meals for homebound older adults. These are the two core programs that the Department for the Aging has worked to address food insecurity for older adults for more than 35 years and will continue to do so long past this pandemic. Prior to the pandemic, as you both stated, on any given weekday throughout the city, approximately 18,000 homebound older adults received a meal, a home delivered meal, through the program provided by service providers in the community. This number has remained stable through the present. Unlike older adults who participate in congregate meal service at centers, many older adults receiving home delivered meals, as Councilwoman Chin clearly stated, these are individuals who are unable to attend congregate meal programs because they are either ill or frail, they lack formal supports who can help them provide meals, are able to live safely in their homes if meals are provided, or are unable to prepare meals due to the lack of adequate cooking facilities, a lack of knowledge or the skills to prepare meals, or the inability to safely prepare meals or shop or cook. These are critical supports to keep individuals at home. The home delivered meals is formally connected to the case management agencies, who are responsible to perform in-depth assessments of social, psychological, cognitive, and physical well-being in order to assist clients to live independently. That's the goal, and to live independently in the community. This is also a pillar of the community care 5-year strategic model that we presented to you earlier this year. This further allows more older adults to age in place and to avoid institutionalization. Home delivered meals and case management are integral to making sure that older adults can remain in their community. Through the network of dedicated home delivered meals provider, DFTR currently delivers roughly 4.3 million meals annually to homebound older adults. The provision of meals to a homebound older adult helps ensure that their nutritional needs are met in order to promote overall health and the ability to live independently in the community. You'll hear me say that over and over again, because in the study done by AARP, it was overwhelming. I think 90% of older adults say that they would prefer to stay in their community and in their homes. Following an RFP in 2020, new contracts for home delivered meals program started in January 21. Through this procurement, all New York City is served through 22 catchment areas. Each contractor is responsible for delivering meals in a predetermined geographic catchment area. This RFP also allowed for some innovation in home delivered meals, innovation that we had not seen for a decade. One of the goals of this procurement was to increase the diversity in meal choices. And this came as a response to a survey done by older adults who said that they wanted more choice in their food. Allowing individuals to choose what type of meals they receive also allows control over when they would eat that meal, regardless of when it was delivered. Since contracts started in January, we have been doubling now 27% in the number of frozen meals served so that people can have the choice of when to do that. Chill meals were also added as a choice this year, and to date, 68,000 have been served. We are happy to see a positive response to this wider range of options. In addition to home delivered meals, older adults, as you all know well, because you visit them frequently, older adults can access meals at older adult centers throughout the city. When older adult centers closed for in-person gatherings in March 2020, it was a blow to everyone. But I am proud to say that DFTR quickly transitioned our congregate meal operations to ensure that center members continue to have access to a daily meal. Meal service shifted first to a grab-and-go model. The centers, the operators, the community leaders immediately mobilized to make sure that older adults would not go hungry. And then from that grab-and-go model given the greater restrictions that were imposed on all of us because of this pandemic, it's shifted to a centralized delivery meal system. And that shift was not a long pause. That was an immediate shift. I mean, this pandemic, there was no playbook for it. We were all learning and go as we went, which eventually merged with the city's broader food insecurity initiative, which is also going to answer questions today, Get Food NYC. I want to state and clarify that the DFTA grab and go model, service model is distinct from the Get Food grab and go model, and that you'll hear more about that later. As many of you were, and we definitely were, thrilled that on June 14th, the older adult centers were approved to reopen following our Department of Health and Mental Hygiene's guidance for in-person gatherings, including reduced capacity at congregate settings and or grab and go meals. We understand that this was a slow ramp up based on the combination of factors, including COVID concerns, older adult hesitancy, as well as the complexities of staffing back up after 14 to 16 months of working from home, and establishing a physical plant that was safe to reopen. We appreciated the work that the network has done to ensure that they are able to open safely and to provide the services needed and in compliance with the public health guidelines. As of today, of our 284, 98% are of older adult centers have reopened for in-person programming. Over 660,000 congregate and grab and go meals have been served at our older adult centers since reopening in June. Through this reopening, older adults have not only gained additional community-based access service, but also some of the in-person social interactions that we were all missing during this pandemic. When the pandemic first started, DFTA worked with providers to ensure that older adults still had access to meals, rooted in an understanding that many older adults relied on older adult centers for regular meal access. The centers, as I said earlier, immediately went to grab and go. And we were closed by executive order. DFTA quickly pivoted to what I mentioned earlier, which was the DFTA direct meals. And though these meals were directly provided to the home of the centers, this program grew quickly and beyond any capacity that DFTA may have had. And we knew that all along and always had a plan to transition when it extended capacity to either the Office of Emergency Services, but at that time in May 2020, the mayor established a food czar and Get Food NYC was established to address food insecurity for all New Yorkers. Get Food NYC consists of several programs, including the Emergency Food Delivery Program for meals delivered to the home. Members of older adult centers who have been receiving meals through DFTA's direct meals were transitioned over to the Get Food program at that time. For simplicity of this hearing, I will use the term Get Food NYC or Get Food interchangeably with the EFD program, the Emergency Food Delivery Program. As we planned for the sunset, frankly, of Get Food this end of October, DFTA has been working closely with the Mayor's Office of Food Policy and the Housing Recovery Operations to ensure that all 60+ participants who are currently receiving meals through Get Food can continue to have access to meals if needed. We are pleased that we started this transition immediately to minimize any disruption, as much disruption as we could in meal access. For older adults, these options there are 3 options, and they include congregate and grab and go at local community centers, home delivered meals for those who are deemed homebound, and a new recovery program for those who are neither homebound or not affiliated with a congregate center just yet. As always, we will screen and connect the programs to the persons to the most appropriate program to meet their current needs. As we look towards the future, our goal is to re-engage older adults in the core meal programs that have already existed, such as congregate meals and, when possible, home-delivered meals. But there is a safeguard, which is the recovery meal program, which is being established. We are pleased that we've been working closely with OMB on funding to enroll all eligible older adults currently on wait lists for home delivered meals over the next few weeks. As such, we know there will be an increase in home delivered meals clients. We saw that early during the pandemic, and have also engaged and have been in constant communication with both the home delivered meals programs and the case management agencies, so that they can assist with the implementation of the new recovery meals program. As such, we know that there will be increased demands placed on home delivered meal providers. Additionally, we know that continuing to strengthen and support the home delivered meal provider network allows us to easily and quickly increase capacity in case of future emergencies. We continue to work in earnest with OMB to address these needs. In conclusion, I would say we know that access to meals, as it has been for the last 40 years of DFTA's existence, is a fundamental component of not just stability and health, but also independence and aging in place. Ensuring older adults have access to meals is the foundation of the work for DFTA, and we're happy to continue to expand this core mission and to address any emergency needs. I am proud of the work that DFTA has done, especially over the past 2 years during these ever-changing times. I'm thrilled about the partnership that we have had with the Aging Committee that has made a lot of this work now permanent. As we all continue towards recovery and increased in-person service provisions, I value the partnership that we have with our sister agencies. We have worked tirelessly to make sure that this transition is seamless, and have come up with provisions to ensure that we have minimal disruption of service. And with that, I will thank you very much, and I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Cortez Vasquez. I will now turn it over to questions from the chairs. Panelists from the administration, please stay unmuted during this question and answer period. And a reminder to both chairs, you will be in control of muting and unmuting yourself during this question and answer period. Thank you. Chair Chin, you may begin.
Thank you. Before I start my question, I'd like to mention that we have been joined by Councilmember Ayala and Councilmember Lewis. Thank you, Commissioner, for your testimony. It's always great to see you. Commissioner, from what we heard back in July, there are about 25,000 seniors, older adults that is still in the Get Food program. And from your testimony right now, DFTA serve the home delivered meal program serve over 30,000 seniors. So what is DFTA's plan, working with administration, to transition this group of senior that is on the Get Food program into your home delivered meal for the homebound seniors?
All right, so I'm gonna take it because I see this in 3 different buckets. All right, so can I answer it in the 3 different buckets and talk to you about what we've been doing? All right. So the first thing that we've been doing, we've been working very closely with Get Food NYC in comparing data, client lists, to make sure that we get a full picture of who has been served, and who needs to continue to be served. So the first thing that we've done is did a match between our client database and congregate meals and the city's database. And once we did that, we started working with the centers, and I have to say that the senior center staff and the directors immediately started calling that client base, which was about 8,000, immediately calling them, and over 60% said, we're ready to get off Get Food and we want to go back to our senior centers, all right? And then we are working with that, finishing the calls, but also getting some assurance and getting some systems in place. We've also had a very similar process and discussion with the home delivered meals providers. What has been very important is that we knew from the onset, as you well said, Councilwoman, there were individuals that were home delivered meals clients and are on our wait list, but we didn't have the capacity at that time to serve them. So they went on to Get Food as a default program to make sure that their food insecurity was addressed. There were about anywhere between 750 and 800 of those. We worked with the network immediately to talk about their capacity. Could those be absorbed? We were assured and have been very confident that the network, the home delivered meals providers, can have that capacity, and those can be absorbed within their current operations. That said, you know that our concern is that's going to reach its point, its breaking point at some point, right? And so what we're looking at a variety of other things, and so that's why we came up with the recovery program. The recovery program is going to be a program where many of the individuals who are not ready to get off Get Food, who are not ready to go to the senior centers, but who still want meals delivered, they will get meals through the recovery program. We also have the recovery program as a default for those individuals who are deemed home delivered meals eligible, and we put them in there until we can find a home or provider that can provide them, permanently provide them home delivered meals. And then there is that entire number of individuals, and it fluctuates. I mean, and Get Food will be able to answer those numbers, but it fluctuates anywhere, and the census changes daily. So it was at one point, at its highest point, it was 10,000. At its lowest point, I think just last week, it was 7,000 of those individuals who were not affiliated, but and we're surveying them to see if they still need Get Food. And the recovery program is there to continue services for those individuals. And that's what we're doing to make sure that there is a seamless transition in each one of us, of those service categories that older adults usually can fit.
I think this is the first time we're hearing about this recovery program.
Yeah, it is. I mean, well, that's what I don't know if it's the first time, but I do know that we put it in place, and it's one of the plans that we're expecting to put in place, just so that we do not find ourselves with 7,000 older New Yorkers, 60 plus, without food, who are still not feeling food insecure, who are not eligible for home delivered meals, or who are not interested in participating in a senior center.
From the number that you have just mentioned, that doesn't seem to be matching the number that we have in terms of who's the older adults that's in the Get Food program. I mean, it's such a larger number. So you're saying that 8,000 are seniors that were originally connected to an older adult center?
The number that were originally,
because you're saying the providers are calling them. So these are the seniors.
Right.
That
so the first
number,
when we first started, we transferred 44,000 people over to Get Food, and there was a combination, of was it 44? No, it was 14,000. Michael will give you the numbers. That is not my strength. My strength is program design and program development. There was a group of individuals that were on Get Food that were clearly associated with the older adult clubs, and those were about 8,000 when we did the match. All right, and anyone else can amplify if you want, anyone on this panel. When we did that match, that number of older adults is what the providers started calling. And from the feedback that we got, 60% of about 87% of those calls were done. 60% of those individuals said that they were willing to go back to the senior centers and get food. So that's the number. And then there were about another 800 that we knew from our case management agencies that immediately went to home delivered meals. The case management agencies and home delivered meals providers in conversations are able to absorb those seamlessly, all right? And now we're looking at about another anywhere between 2,000, 2,500. The number fluctuates every day as we're making more calls and people are either deemed not home delivered meals eligible or people are not willing to be in the program any longer, not interested in being in the program any longer. That number of calls and arrangements are going on as we speak. And then there was this other number, and any of you can clarify, about anywhere about 7,000 of people who are unaffiliated and who we're looking at to support in a recovery program.
Are there part of that 7,000? Is that only us older adults? You're not talking about
No,
anybody that's under 60.
Councilwoman, I'm only talking about 60 plus. Get Food will be well prepared to answer under 60. I can only give you the services and the transition programs that we're putting in place with our network of agencies for the 60 plus.
Okay, I think somebody raised their hand.
This is Michael Ognabeni. Just to clarify the numbers, what we're in, and Get Food will be able to confirm this. As of last week, the number of people 60 plus still participating in Get Food is just above 16,000. So we've seen it drop considerably over the last few weeks. So as of last week, what we're solving for is 16,233. Of that number, as Commissioner mentioned, a good percent, 8,000 or so, have been called by the senior centers, and we've got about 6,000. People are constantly entering and leaving the system. So each week we gain some, we lose some. So there are about 5,000 or so that we still need to call. But as Commissioner explained, 60% have indicated they will no longer need the Get Food services after October 15th. So the number is 16,000.
Okay. So now what we've heard from providers is that a lot of them are finding themselves to be short-staffed, and part of it is due to the vaccination mandate and the need for capital repair to their home delivery meal van. So what is the city, what's DFTA doing to support these providers with staff shortage and capital repairs?
Well, staff shortage is a difficult one. What we could do is provide funding for staff, for replacement of staff. And early on, we sent again, in our constant communication and working with OMB, we were able to send a communication to our networks, letting them know to keep informing us as to what their needs were so that we could address those from a budgetary perspective. Jose, do you want to address when we sent that email and when we sent that communication and where we're at?
Yes, good morning, Commissioner. Good morning, Councilman. Right now, for example, we actually have put in a capital request to replace 44 hotshot vans. That is currently on the process we're working on right now. So that's kind of in terms of replacing those vehicles. And that's a 10-year, replacing those vehicles that are over 10 years old.
But Jose, can you address the assurance that we gave to providers that as their capacity grew?
Yes, currently we're basically, we're adjusting their budgets to reflect the current Get Food transitions right now. So we're doing that right now.
Does that answer your question, Councilwoman?
Well, in terms of the funding, right? I mean, there's a long-standing issue of funding that's insufficient reimbursement rate. And in the council, we have always, pushed for increasing the funding as a priority. Now, the new contract that you have with these home delivered meal program, you increase the rate to $9.58. But the provider has always been pushing for $11.78. So have DFTA talked to OMB about increasing the rate?
We've had not the rate for the recovery program. The recovery program will increase from the $5 number that you figured up to the $9.58 as we currently pay home delivered meals programs. We have been talking to OMB, and these are constant, very good, productive conversations about increasing the home delivered meals rate to about $10.52.
It's still not up to the national average of $11.78.
The need always outpaces the resources, and that national average does not account for the kind of scale and volume that New York has. And so therefore we look at that, we take our volume and our scale. You can't compare New York to some other cities in Ohio and Indiana, which also may be increasing the providers, well-intended, well-informed, well-educated, are asking for us to come with the national average, where we will look at that in earnest. But I think where we've arrived, there was about a $10.52. We looked at our highest cost providers and went beyond that.
Well, I think we can continue to look at that. And I know that during the budget process, we, in our city council response, we asked for an increase of 16.6 million. And we said it's home delivered meal program. And the administration just say, oh, the senior center is going to be open. They missed the boat. I mean, we're talking about seniors who don't go to senior center, adult center, because they can't. I think we're going to have to.
I'm sorry. I have to applaud you, because it's been a conversation that we've always had, to distinguish the two programs and the distinction in terms of service provision, but also the distinction in cost of both programs. So, and I always welcome and appreciate so much your clarity on those two distinct programs.
Well, we're going to continue to push, because the number, there's waiting lists that you also mentioned earlier. So we have to continue to push for more funding for the home delivered meal. I'm going to pass it on to my co-chair, Councilmember Vallone, to ask some questions, and then I'll come back later.
Thank you, Chair Chin. Okay, Commissioner, and to the team there, I guess it's a good start to try to see what vision is going to be here in this transition. But let me see if I've got some of this straight. So the Get Food NYC federal $1 billion program that's coming to a close, that was maintained by the Department of Sanitation, correct?
Yes.
And they had their own vendors. I think there was 22 vendors providing those meals, and those vendors and those contracts, that's separate from DFTA, right? So that was all part of this federal program.
Absolutely
right?
correct.
Okay, so in that transition, you've got a separate group of vendors, and I won't get to the 3 buckets that you outlined yet on the folks that are in that group, but the vendors that were providing those meals for that program, will they continue in any capacity, or will DFTA use your own vendors to provide the difference going forward?
So I'm going to let Get Food answer what's going to happen with their vendors. They're better prepared for that. But what I will say is that where possible, we would rely on, for the 2 distinct programs, the home delivered meals and congregate, it's the provider network that has been created and that really knows how to address older adult meals. For the
So that
recovery,
provider network, Commissioner, that's your existing
yes,
contractual provider network.
right.
So
And
we're
then
basically
looking at-
gonna use that group, and I guess with the overflow or the merging of some of the new folks in only the 60 plus. I don't even want to get into the under because that's not fair to you on that. But in the 60 plus world, that was part of Get Food. So your existing contract and the vendors, and that's what Chair Chin was looking at with OMB. How are we going to provide for those additional meals in the transition if the budget's not going to be increased to absorb those additional people? I mean, that would be my first concern.
Great question, great concern. We all share it. And that's why we have continuous, very productive conversations with OMB about those precise issues. And then we have this recovery program, but I'm going to turn it over to Get Food so that they can address the questions around their vendors and that transition.
Sure.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember, for that question. And what I can tell you is that overall, since April of 2020, when we were brought into the program, we've had 72 different vendors, which is with 77 contracts. There are a couple of vendors that had multiple meal types. 13 at the very, very beginning, there were 13 vendors that DFDA was using that we did leverage. So there was some overlap in the very, very beginning. But as you know, the program grew very, very quickly. And so we ended up with many, many more vendors than the original ones that we had taken over from DFDA. So at this point, our current Get Food contracts, they will sunset and those contracts will end. We have been, as the commissioner has said, we've been in discussions with DFDA about our vendors. They have been, pursuing their new program, but the actual contracts that we hold will end.
So Deputy Commissioner, of those contracts, what was the amount of funding that was used for those 22 different contractors? I think you said up to 77. How much of that budget was used for those vendors?
Let me just pull up our budget here. 1 second.
And do you have the difference between, I guess, 60 plus and everyone else? Because I'd like to kind of focus, because I think it's fair to do apple to
apple. Of course. The challenge we have with measuring 60 plus is that the first half of the pandemic, the way the emergency food program was set up was to deliver by address, and so we didn't actually capture people's information. And so it was only in October of 2020 that we started to capture those demographics. So that is just an unfortunate weakness of that part of the program. However, we have overall, we've spent over $800 million for emergency food. We do expect that FEMA will be reimbursing us for the vast majority of that, which is a good thing. That we've delivered about 135 million total meals, so that's all ages. And I can pull up for you, if you're interested in number of meals, et cetera, for 60 plus for where we know it. But like I said, about $800 million overall for the emergency food program.
Well, I mean, thank God for that. And we're all thankful that that happened. But I think the next step now is, I mean, it sounds like you've had a year from last October to this October to find out how many 60 plus. What is your current estimate on how many of those meals were delivered to 60 plus in New York City?
Yep, so we have those numbers. We currently have just over, as Michael Ognebeni mentioned, over 16,000 people 60 plus who are, as of last week, we're still receiving meals. At least 66,000, maybe some more, were people already known to DFDA, but there were some new customers that were not necessarily known to DFDA. And so DFDA is doing the work now, as was mentioned, with partners to understand that demographic and who those people are. So it is, just as a comparison, right now, as of last week, the people under 60 served by the program was 7,740. So it is the vast majority of people currently in the Get Food program who are 60 plus.
So the data that's been collected, how is that data being disseminated and provided to DFDA so that when the transition, actually not complete, but begins, that they will have the correct data for those 60 plus?
So as it's a program that iterates. So we have a process, confidential process to share customer data, and that's what's being used right now for DFTA and their team to make the phone calls. Every week we update our information, so we have a sense of how the numbers are changing. Overall, the program continues to shrink. So these numbers continue to go down, which is a good thing. Where we have fluctuation is just with the test and trace folks who need to quarantine, but overall, these numbers are continuing to go down. So while we have a few new customers, largely our customer base is shrinking.
So it sounds like the phone call part of this is on DFTA's end. Can you not, prior to the closure of the federal program, also be part of the notification process to these over 16,000 seniors, some of which who don't get phone calls or are very scared to pick up the phones? I'm very dubious on this notification process during the transfer. I know with my own seniors as an elder law attorney, the odds of them picking up a phone call from an unknown phone number and getting that critical information is slim to none. What is your role in notifying folks who previously received a meal through Get Food NYC? Are we just going to dump it on the hands of DFTA?
I will defer to the Mayor's Office of Food Policy for the overall approach, but I will say that Department of Sanitation is involved in sending letters. So we have multiple touch points. Where we have an email, we are sending emails, we are sending hard copy letters, and then there is an extensive effort to do phone calls. But I will defer to the folks that are in charge of that effort to give you more detail.
Well, I mean, that's the first time we just heard about it. Otherwise, prior to that was just less than 8,000. You said 50% of 8,000 were cold. So 4,000, all these numbers are based on 4,000 phone calls, and we don't even know how many were picked up. So there is a letter process and an email and a phone call. So how do we know who's doing what and who's going to be responsible for the remaining?
So the coordination and the strategy, overall strategy, I would defer to the Mayor's Office of Food Policy to discuss, but what we have been tasked to do at sanitation is to ensure that there's a hard copy mailer that goes out to customers about next steps, where to go for more information, whether you're 60 plus or you're under 60, et cetera. And like I said, where we have emails, we are contacting people by email. And then obviously we are leveraging people's phone numbers.
So I guess a good thing
not sanitation. So sanitation is not doing any of the phone calls.
Well, I guess a good thing would be with the success of that through sanitation. And do you know then, or at least that data, so maybe that would reduce duplication or additional efforts for those who have already confirmed that they want to either continue or transition or don't want. So is that data then going to be transferred from sanitation over to DFTA or OMB or the mayor's office? I mean, it's just, for me, you just want to reinvent the wheel.
Correct. We have a process, like I said, each week where we are updating. So based on the phone calls, based on the effort, we have a better understanding of who is still in the program and who is still interested in or in need of continuing meal service after the Get Food program sunsets.
So when
Chair Vallone, can I just interject on the thing about the phone call?
Please
So
do.
are you doing personal phone calls or is it robocall?
I will defer again to the Mayor's Office of Food Policy, Kate McKenzie, to answer those questions about phone calls. So Kate, I'll hand it over to you.
Sure. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And I certainly want to offer my thanks and gratitude to Commissioner Cortez, and I know that she will want to speak also to the communication specifically with individuals known to DFTA. So over the course of the pandemic, certainly with Get Food, and now as we begin to transition into recovery food programs, we've engaged this expertise, frankly, of the Housing Recovery Office, otherwise known as HRO, who was certainly instrumental post-Sandy in reaching out to all of the impacted communities to speak with them, to assess their needs, using an asset that they have called Resource Navigators. Those Resource Navigators have been central to the Get Food team in managing customer communications. As we move into the recovery process, into the very specific moments to engage with Get Food clients around the appropriate recovery needs, HRO, it's a multi-pronged strategy. Initially, Chair, to your question, initially it was with robocalls, texts, and text and emails. And then after the first 2 weeks, we began using outgoing phone calls to actually speak with individuals. And again, those resource navigators are certainly trained in the communication, the time it takes to speak with individuals, and repeated phone calls are ongoing. We've of course been in very regular communications with our strong team at DFTA, who also, I think to your point, Chair Ballone, we're using also some of the older adult centers to make those calls because they are known to that population. But Commissioner, I'm not sure if you'd like to speak further to that specific process.
Wait, I just heard a lot of, and I don't have any numbers to what you just said. So it sounds like
Sure.
a multi-tiered process to reaching out to the seniors. How many seniors do we know have been reached and have confirmed that they want to continue with a meal in some capacity that are over 60 plus, and how many seniors have not been contacted? That was the
Sure.
question, and I still haven't gotten an answer.
So to this specific senior population, I know, Commissioner, your team is really owning a great deal of that. I can speak to the HRO outreach, and let me see if I can get
Let me
numbers
answer this,
specific to
Kate.
seniors. Go ahead,
Yes.
yes.
Councilmember Vallone, as I said in my testimony, one of the first things that we did when we heard of this transition was to ask for a database so that we could, through a process that we have in the city, is to share and compare databases.
Right.
And so from the early on, just this is preliminary numbers, is looking at who were older adults who were identified that we knew that were in our system, in our STAR data system. And we then gave those that information to our senior centers, who had a very specific touch point, which was a call. It was a call to that population that they knew. We also had a similar process with home delivered meals clients, those that were known to us, and what we're working out now with those that are not known to us, all right? So those that were known to us, the case management agencies, as we're speaking, and the senior older adult clubs, as we're speaking, have been reaching out to those clients that are known to us so that we can have an assessment. I will get back to you the actual number. The last number that I heard about last week was about, we contacted about 7,000 through the senior center network, and about 60% of the, we contacted them, and about something like 6,000 responded. And of those, 60% said that they were ready to go back to the older adult club. I will give you the numbers of the actual numbers that we've called, and the numbers that are still to be reached, and the numbers that have said that they're willing to and ready to transition either to home delivered meals program permanently, or to a senior, back to their old senior center. All right, but those
Commissioner,
Yeah.
well, hang on, Ms. Chin, I'm just following. I'm looking at every word in your testimony, because I always do, and there's not one number. So in all due respect, when I'm asking a question for numbers and you're referring to things that you're saying you're telling, it is not in there. So it's not a matter of semantics on a matter of percentage of the numbers, but we're getting to a point where we're about to transition and we're going to lose the Department of Sanitation and the federal assistance of $1 billion. And it's all going to get wound up, handed off to you. So I'm trying to make sure that you and DFTA and your team, like if I'm in that, has exactly what you need, so that we can't say, well, gee, I wish that the mayor's office or sanitation or the federal, before they ended, would have given us that so we could break it down. I don't want anything dropped in your lap that we can't handle, so that I want it seamlessly handed over to you so that you know exactly that number of the amount of seniors of 60 plus that we're receiving. And I'm really not getting those numbers really from anybody. So let me commit, Chair Chin, I know you had something, and I just want to jump back into those numbers.
Yeah, no, I agree with you that, I mean, one of the main things is that we don't want any older adult to get lost in the system,
Absolutely.
right? Because
Right.
when you talked about the match, I am very, confident that any seniors that is connected to an older adult center, to the provider network, is going to get the help in the language that they understand, and they're going to get connected. What we're concerned about is the seniors who are not connected to the older adult center, and they signed up for Get Food during the pandemic. we want to make sure, and we want to know the number, right? And make sure that these seniors get connected to the
Yes.
adult center. Because I know during the pandemic, they were helping to make calls to sign people up for Get Food. So I don't know if they were able to capture, those data, or they were given those people that they did help make phone calls for, or whether those are the ones that also will be able to get connected. So it's that other missing population, because you're talking about last week, the number was what, 16,000?
16,233 is the number that was cited by both the deputy
Yeah, but-
commissioner and Mike, and confirmed by Michael.
Yeah, but then DIFTA's only being able to match less than half of that, right? Because you mentioned about 80,000,
Yes.
8,000. So
I will-
what's going to
we will
happen to
get
the
you-
other, right?
Right, absolutely. First of all, we have common cause here. The common cause is to make sure that this does not get dumped on DIFTA. We are
Right.
working very closely with the mayor's office, with the deputy commissioner of the sanitation department, to make sure that we get the information that we need. One, for those individuals that are not known to the Department for the Aging. And I will get you those numbers. We will work very closely. We've been asking for that. We're working closely with the mayor's office of food policy to do that. That we will continue working with the network of agencies that know the older population, those that either they referred to Get Food, those that we know we referred to Get Food for home delivered meals, and those that we referred. And by the end of this day, you will get the number as we know it today. All right. And I will give you both the number of those calls that have been made to date. I'll give you Friday's date, calls that have been made. I will give you the numbers for home delivered meals in congregate, and then I will let you know where we are with the number of unaffiliated, what that number is, and then what's the gap to fill within the next 2 weeks. All right.
That would be so helpful in fighting for you and with you on budget, right? Because once we get an idea, even a rough idea, on how many additional 60+ seniors we're talking about, clearly the existing budget doesn't we're dealing with the pre-existing numbers, and now all of a sudden we're talking. So I'm just gonna, the last couple, just so I can get my head around it. Commissioner, you were great in outlining the 3 different groups, the buckets that you mentioned. There were those that were ready to transition. There are those that can be absorbed. There's those we're reaching out to. But you mentioned, and I guess maybe this is for anyone here, there's a third group, and it's somewhere between 7,000 and 10,000 that may have an eligibility requirement, or the eligibility is not going to be there, do not meet the requirements under the current program. That's all part of the notice. See, it's one thing to get a phone call to let them know it's transitioning. It's another thing for a senior who's now not going to be eligible for a meal that they got under this new federal program, but are not eligible under the pre-existing DIFTA home delivered meal program. Do we have an idea or a plan on how we're going to get that information to folks and how we can help them understand those eligibility requirements?
That is the process that we rely on the mayor's office for food policy, and the director McKinsey, that the director McKinsey was describing. We are relying on them to provide that information to us so that we could then put in place the recovery program for exactly those individuals that you mentioned.
So before we hand it off to Director McKenzie, so this recovery program, it sounds interesting, and I think it's the first we're hearing of it. Can you just maybe flesh that out a little bit on who's is the recovery part of DIFTA? Is it going to be something new? Is it going to be to encapsulate these new seniors?
Yeah, DIFTA will be responsible for the recovery program for the 60+, right?
Okay.
And the recovery program is exactly that. It is those individuals who still might find themselves food insecure, who have never participated in an older adult club and who have no interest in participating in older adult club, who have been receiving their meals at home, but who are not deemed eligible for home delivered meals. So that category was created precisely for those individuals. All right.
That sounds wonderful, and that sounds like almost an emergency new task force type of thing, because it's going to be an unknown. You don't know if it's going to be one person or it's going to be 10,000 people, but that might be the greatest safety net you could create, is that type of program to assist that transition, because a lot of folks aren't even going to know what group they fall into.
Right, but that's where the communication and the coordinated communication is important between the Office of Food Policy and the Department for the Aging, as well as with the Department of Sanitation, and making sure that we are coordinating our databases and working together. But what I want to say is, and I don't want to give the impression that this is a new program, a new standing program that's going to be in there indefinitely. This is a transition program for Get Food, and this recovery program is just a transition program. It is a time-limited program. All right. Thank you,
Chair Chin. If you need me, I'll jump in on any other questions, but I'm sure I used all my time.
Yeah, no, Commissioner, when you said it's a transition program,
yeah,
in terms of, do you have a funding amount that you're looking at? Make sure that you get the money?
We're working right now with OMB and making sure that we have the support of the Get Food program and the Mayor's Office of Food Security to support that program until the duration. And what we are looking at is a end date of June. And yes, we're looking at those numbers, and even looking at some of the Get Food vendors as possible subcontractors for that. So that program, as soon as we get more and more information as to the size of that program, and that comes from Director McKenzie's operation, we will be able to stand that up.
Well, I mean, it sounds like we're not going to have the same amount of folks, clearly. So it's just a matter of how many new folks will be eligible to now participate in the pre-existing gift to home delivered meal program. This recovery program is a type of a safety net for those who are kind of transitioning in, but it certainly sounds like we're going to have to allocate additional funding, and that becomes our challenge number one now as you absorb. It could be anywhere from 1 to 16,000 new folks coming in. And as we figure that number out, there's definitely going to be an additional need for resources at the very minimum. And I think that's where we can partner with you to champion that budget.
Right. And the other need that, we've discussed over and over again is the increased demand of home delivered meals. We know, and we're working hand in arm, or whatever the phrase is, with lockstep with OMB around making sure that we carefully monitor this increase in what we know will be people who are actually deemed in need of home delivered meals. So that's one of those other areas that we're looking at with OMB.
And that's what we and that's what we can follow up, Margaret, with once we have the ascertaining of those numbers. And then with the budget, that would be a great follow-up to today's hearing with the commissioner's team as to how many estimated seniors we're talking about and what type of budget increase we will need.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, definitely there's going to be a big increase for the home delivered meal. And you talked about, there was a waiting list, and then you had to transfer them to the Get Food. And then right now with the vaccination rate for the older adult, the group that is like 85 plus, I mean, the vaccination rate is not that high. And so they're not going to be going to the congregate center. And they're going to be the one that will be needing the home delivered meal. So I think that number it's going to increase tremendously. And we just want to make sure that there's sufficient funding for that. But with this recovery program, who's going to be responsible for people who are under 60? I know DFTA, it's Get Food, Director McKenzie. So is it going to be still under
Sure.
you? Or,
Sure.
Or
I'm happy to respond to that. Thank you for the question. So as I mentioned, the Mayor's Office of Food Policy advises across city agencies and the administration on issues related to food policy, and we are not operational. So we have, for this specific under 60 population, again, we have partnered and leveraged the expertise at the Housing Recovery Office to be able to stand up and manage the under 60 population in a program that is in contract negotiations right now to provide grocery credits for individuals under 60 who are still in need of food after Get Food winds down.
Okay, so it's not HRA or any of the social service.
Correct.
And
For this pilot program, I want to underscore that it is a pilot program. The management of that program will fall out under the Housing Recovery Office.
okay, and it's going to go until next June.
It should. We have OMB funding for these recovery programs through the fiscal.
And do you know what's the amount that the OMB have allocated for the recovery program?
For the pilot of Grocery to Go in the executive budget is about $6.8 million.
Okay. So, Commissioner, to get back to the home delivered meal. So right now, home delivered meal is only 5 days a week, right? And we have, I think, Meals on Wheels.
Yes,
They do
City
the
Meals on
weekend.
Wheels, which provides a sixth meal for a select population. Yeah.
So is there a budget request to accommodate the increase in that because that population is going to increase also.
We're looking at that now and looking at the impact of that and that's all part of the discussion with OMB around home delivered meals.
Yeah, because I know that we have had that discussion before. I mean, there's 7 days to a week. And these seniors are only getting meals 5 days a week. So what are they going to do for the weekend? I mean,
Yeah,
I
so
know
most of them
senior,
get the sixth meal and some get a seventh meal. But yes, you're absolutely right. That has been the program that we've designed. And we're looking at the impact of that sixth meal and that occasional seventh meal.
yeah, because I know the council, we had actually had a 6 meal initiative that we funded the 6 meal program for quite a while. And we want to make sure that the administration, continue to look at that, especially for the more, older adult population and the frail elderly. And that's
Right.
really what's needed. So I think that we want to make sure that the budget is in place, because I know that the service provider, and we'll hear from them later, I mean, they've been doing a terrific job, and with short notice and doing all this calling, and they're the one that's connecting the senior. We just want to make sure that they have adequate, support. And I think I don't know if you can share with us, like the recent RFP for the older adult center.
I can share some very top lines because it hasn't been finalized. So as you know, the RFP was closed for submissions on June 11th and received a high volume of wonderful applications. We've been reviewing and scoring those applications internally, and we're working with the Mayor's Office of Contract Services to finalize the list of those applicants who have been deemed eligible for those contract awards. And of course, the contracts are anticipated to start this fall. Of the current list who have been deemed eligible for a contract, I'm pleased to say that there will be 31 new older adult clubs, or NORCs added to the network. So we had made a commitment with the increased funding that you are so adept at helping us get. We were able to, we made a commitment of up to 25, and now we're up to 31 new OACs or NORCs will be added to the network, which will increase access to services and address a lot of those transportation deserts that we all know well of. And as you may recall, we're thrilled that we're adding even more. And I must say that providers currently deemed eligible will result in a network comprising of 272 older adult clubs, up from 249, and 36 DIFTA funded NORCs, up from the current level of 28.
And you said the contract's going to start in the fall.
The contract will start in the fall.
What is that date? Is that
The
October,
date,
November?
the date, it will not go beyond November 1st. I can tell you that. The contract, once we get the approval from the Office of Contract Services, negotiations will start immediately with the providers
So
that have been deemed
So-
eligible.
okay, so you're letting us know that the new contract will start before November 1st.
Yes, that is my goal. And
Because-
that is our mutual goal.
Because we still got funding that is in the council. We want to make sure that our money is put to good use to
Yes,
support these center. And since they're not starting until almost November, then that's what we
we
have
will
to
be
give them.
able to, and correct me if I'm wrong, Michael or Jose, we will be able to share the list of those who are deemed eligible for a contract as soon as Mox agrees to it and we engage in contract negotiations. So I think some of those can happen concurrently.
Okay. Well, let us know as soon as you can. I mean, like, we just want to make
I
sure.
will. I
that,
will,
you know-
and you will be as pleased as we are. I can't thank you enough and the councilman enough that in the last 20 years, we've not seen a number of increase in senior centers. And definitely since the creation of NORCs, we have not been able to see an increase in the NORCs. So that the fact that we have 31 new outlets to serve this growing older adult populations, and that we're narrowing the gap in our service desert, it's something that you leave an incredible legacy. And so the network cannot thank you enough for that.
No, thank you, Commissioner. We're really happy to see the expansion. And we just want to make sure that they have sufficient, support and funding for that.
Right.
That's our
I'm
mighty
gonna-
Margaret. That's our
What?
mighty Margaret.
We're gonna pass on to Councilmember Dinowitz has a question. I saw his hand. Councilmember?
Yes, hello. Good, is it morning still? Yes, good morning. Thank you, Chair Vallone and Chair Chin. I actually do want to follow up on some of the questions that the chair had about the RFP. So I'm a little confused. When were the older adult centers supposed to start their new contracts? Because
The
you
new
said they're gonna
contracts are supposed to start October 1st.
but the goal is to have the RFP done by November 1st?
No later than November 1st. It'll be a rolling, yes, we have to, because we have to wait for final approval from the Office of Contract Services.
Okay, so if I'm at older adult club or older adult center, I'm trying to plan my program and plan my meals, which is part of why we're here. How am I able to really do that with confidence if my contract was for the
Councilman
first?
Dinowitz, yeah, Councilman Dinowitz, one of the things that we did precisely because the pandemic never allows us to plan with certainty. One of the things that we did was we extended the contracts so that there is an overlapping period in the current contracts. All right. So
it's not
one of the
October-
things that was a safeguard that we built in precisely because we knew that there would be no certainty. We never knew what was going to happen. So we built in an extension to the current contracts to just make sure that we had a safeguard in a fallback position. And thank you and welcome to the committee.
Thank you. Thank you. But when are those contracts extended until?
Yeah.
Jose, our chief financial officer can give you those kind of details. Jose, when are the extensions What is the term of the extensions?
June 22,
All right,
Of
June
next,
30th, June 30th, 2022.
okay, got it.
So as we basically start to award, we will start transitioning the contract. So we'll be closing contracts, opening contracts, so we have this all in place. We'll be communicating with our providers as we always do. We'll give them enough time to transition from the old to new. We'll be reconciling the old contracts versus the new contracts. So there's plenty of time to do all this once we get the awards out.
Thanks,
yeah,
Liz.
Councilmember Dinowitz, continuity of service is key to us. As we know that it's of a high priority for you, but it's a higher priority for the older adult.
Well, yeah, it's a high priority for me because it's a high priority for my constituents.
Absolutely.
The other question I had, it regards vaccinations. The other thing Chair Chin mentioned was, especially for the older adults older than 85 years old, vaccination rates are very low. So they may not want to go to the center to get food, but I'm concerned about people who are vaccinated who may not want to attend an older adult club because we don't know the vaccination status. Now, what rules or regulations or systems are in place to check vaccination status of older adults so that constituents can go into a center and eat, even with lowered capacity, eat with peace of mind?
That's a great question. And it's a great question. And it's a question that we all have. And that even the Department of Health, who is our partner in determining when is it safe to open and how much can we open and what kind of capacity can we have. So we're in constant communication. Right now, we do not ask for proof of vaccination for attending a congregate center. So what we have in lieu of asking for proof of vaccination is the social distancing requirement, a 25% limited capacity given the physical space, and as well as masking and the 4 cores, washing your hand and all, using sanitizer and wiping down systems and making sure that the air is purified. So all of those things have been in place, all right? What we're doing currently and what we're doing with the Department of Health is looking at 2 possible options. One is asking for a vaccination mandate and we have a mandate now for staff, for all staff of senior centers. We're asking it for participants. And then we're also, looking at the other option is asking for vaccination, proof of vaccination to participate as they do in local restaurants. So the Department of Health is looking at all of those issues. And we're looking at the mandate is very much aligned with what is happening in nursing homes, where all older adults have to be vaccinated to
expired.
and as well as all staff.
Oh.
And so those are 2 things that we're in constant communication with. This is an ever-changing situation, and this is an ever-changing virus.
So I know that I don't mean to interrupt you. I just mean to respect the time, which I am over, but I hope I can, Chair, if I can have
Yeah,
an
sure.
minute. Thank you. Why is there no mandate currently? I hear you're looking at it. I hear that it is important, but why is there currently no mandate?
I will defer to the Department of Health, given the Department of Health is our partner in this, and in consultation with them, we follow their guidance.
Okay, because there are a number of seniors who are vaccinated who I imagine would go to a restaurant because they know vaccination is checked, but they wouldn't go to their own senior center, which I think is a little backwards. I think they should, especially with older adults who we know are more susceptible to the virus, be in a place that they know that they could be safe. And right now, with no mandate, it's I don't think it's safe. So the other thing is, how do you know the air is pure? You mentioned checking to make sure the air is purified. Is every older adult center provided with air purifiers and ventilation?
The centers went through a variety of guidance on getting the physical plant ready for reopening, and that happened several months ago.
Okay, and that data is there data available for that, or is
we can get you that data.
Thank you. Thank you. And but just to reiterate, for the mandate, it's the Department of Health. It is wholly their decision.
It
to
is the
require mandate?
department, right? We have the Department of Health, and the doctor of the city of New York determines when it is safe. And I have utmost respect because he's been able to keep us pretty safe until now. What is the guidance and how we should implement that guidance?
Right, because just again, just going back to following up on what Chair Chin said is, do you know how many older adults are getting meals delivered or require meal deliveries because they're too scared to go to the center because there's no vaccination mandate? And I guess you don't know. I guess no one will know the reasons people,
Right,
you know, they would, but I think I'll leave it there. So I'm a little over the minute extension that I asked for. But thank you, Chair Vallone and Chair Chin.
Thank you. We'll follow up on that later. Councilmember Brooks Power has a question. Her hand's raised.
Start in time.
Hi, can you hear
Hi.
me?
Yes.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. Thank you to both of our chairs for pulling today's oversight meeting together. I will start by saying that it would be helpful if we get these testimonies much more in advance. I think it's really unacceptable to get testimonies from our commissioners in the midst of the hearing to be able to be prepared. But I did receive a number of calls from providers in my district who asked that I speak up on a couple of things on here. So I have about 4 questions that I'll just run off and then allow the commissioner and staff to be able to respond to. So the first one is, how is DFTA supporting the current home delivery meal contracts? Understanding that many of the current contracts are struggling to hire drivers, how can the city attract more drivers? Is there an incentive in terms of pay or recruitment that the city can allocate to assist in promoting these critical positions? So that's one. I know that was a lot. The second one is, there was just a home delivery meals RFP in the midst of the pandemic. How come it did not take into account all these additional older adults who are receiving the meals? The next question is, New York's population of older adults is expected to grow more quickly than other age groups in the next decades. What is the city's long-term plan to continue meeting the needs of an expanding group of older adults? And the last question is, does DFTA have a plan for food delivery service past July 1st? I know it was a little bit of back and forth on that, but it appears that the service ends June 30th. So just wanted to know how thought out the services are beyond the June 30th fiscal year going into the new one. So thank you.
Commissioner,
The commissioner is muted.
Thank you. Could you do me a favor, Councilwoman? Could you repeat question 2? I didn't get question 2. I wrote the other ones. I couldn't quite understand or write number 2. Thank you.
I will, no problem. So the second one was, there was just a home delivery meal RFP in the midst of the pandemic, which you may recall. I know you get a lot of letters, but I did send you a letter around that time about the RFP. But how come it did not take into account all of the additional older adults who are receiving meals?
Okay. So your first one was, how do we support the home delivered meals contracts, right?
Yes.
And your concern was around the allocation and obviously the need for additional drivers. It is,
yes.
Those are the kind of conversations that we currently have and continuously have with the home delivered meal providers. All right. In terms of the RF, so that's an ongoing conversation. There is and you'll hear me say, well, you'll hear the department always testify that the needs outpace the resources, right? But when we issued the RFP, with a growth in mind. And during this pandemic, and I know that there was a lot of discussions about whether we should issue the RFP, shouldn't we? And I will reiterate why we felt that we did, and we're really pleased that we did. It was because the older adult home delivered meals programs, as well as the congregate meal programs, were status quo. They had not changed in 10, some of them 20 years, because there have been contract extensions, and they were not meeting the demands of the diverse population and the change and the population and where the growth was occurring. So that is why we thought it was very important to issue an RFP for the home delivered meals, and that we could be able to establish 22 community districts, service districts for those home delivered meals, taking into account that diversity that occurred and that growth that occurred. And then what we've done, and then to answer your question about population growth, it is something that we're constantly monitoring and trending, which is why it was important for us to issue the RFP for the older adult clubs, because when we looked at it and we did the mapping, there were so many service gaps and so many areas where the diversity was not being addressed. So as I mentioned earlier, we will now have 31 new programs that can address those service gaps and this growing population. And I'm not sure if I understood, so that was the response to the third question. The fourth question, I'm not sure, Councilwoman, can you clarify for me the July 1st delivery system? Is that the recovery that you're talking about? I'm not sure.
So sorry, the food service delivery that's supposed to end, I think you mentioned it earlier, on June 30th. So just wanting to understand beyond June 30th, what is that plan?
Okay, great. So if I'm not mistaken, what I was referring to at that time was this transition program that was dealing with those older adults who are not interested in going to a senior center, who are deemed eligible for home delivered meals. That transition program from the Get Food program is called a recovery program, and the plan currently is to have that program in transition from November 1st through June 30th.
And just one more point of clarification, going back to the first question, focusing again on the drivers in those positions. Has there been conversation with the city and ways in which you can attract more drivers? Like, is there an incentive pay or recruitment effort that the city can work with your agency and making sure that we are doing everything we can to address the workforce gap that's there? I see that in many sectors that there is a workforce gap. I'm even willing to work with you to do a job fair around even that. But like, what is the city doing to address this? Because at the end of the day, we still have our seniors that need this service and depend on it, quite honestly. And as city, as servants to the community, we need to be doing what we can to be able to connect them to the services of need. And so I just want to make sure that we're not leaving any stone uncovered and making sure that that is something that is prioritized. So I'm interested in understanding if the city is doing anything around that space, similar to what we're doing to incentivize the vaccine.
Yeah, we don't have a driver job recruitment program in place. I'd be more than happy to explore that with you and with the network of agencies to see how we could design something like that, and also how we could engage our partners at the Small Business Administration and some of our employment programs to address that. But that is if that is a growing need, it'd be something that we'd be more than happy to work with you on.
Absolutely. I'll have my staff follow up with you. Thank you so
Sure,
much.
thank you so much. We will do that.
Commissioner, I just have a couple more follow-up questions.
Sure.
One is that when you talk about the RFP, and it's great to hear that it's going to be 31 new program. Are there any program that are currently funded that didn't get through the RFP or didn't whether they didn't apply or they weren't selected? How are DFTA going to make sure that those seniors that they serve will be able to get connected to other programs, that they don't get lost?
Right. Well, with an increase of from 249 to 272, that likelihood is pretty minimal. So what we will always look at communities and start looking at where there is a gap in service. So much so that we currently, when we looked at this array and this increase, we identified anywhere between 4 and 5 communities. I think it's 4. Edgar, you'll give me the number, that we saw that were communities that needed additional services for targeted communities, for targeted populations. And one of those was like the St. George area of Staten Island. So we're looking at how can we address that shortage. We're also looking at that in Corona. So there have been some programs, some community districts that we've already identified that are going to need for that are emerging communities and that we need to address. So we're looking at, either addressing those through existing means or issuing an RFP for those targeted communities, for those targeted populations.
So that, that's good to know. The other thing that I was concerned about is that some of the centers that did not get funded, some of the older adult center that did not get through the RFP, at least I know that, as you mentioned earlier, that the contract is extended until the end of the fiscal year, pretty much. So there is a transition time to make sure that these seniors know that if their center is not going to be running, that there's another option for them, another center in the neighborhood that they can join.
Right, there's going to be 31 new options for them to explore, should that, in the event that one program does not get funded.
My last question is on, with senior centers are beginning to open, but not every senior is coming in for a congregate meal. And I know some centers are providing the grab and go, but what about the seniors who are not able to come and do the grab and go and they're not coming in for the congregate meal? Are the provider given support? Are they going to be able to do delivery to them? Because these seniors might not qualify for the home delivered meal. Because that was the issue in the beginning of the pandemic. Like, how were these centers, how are they going to be able to deliver the meal to their members
so
if they don't want to come in?
If I understand the question correctly, that is why we have the benefit of this recovery program for this transition period, precisely for that. Until we get more new guidance on the size, the limitations or lifted on the number of adults that can go into a senior center, until we get a vaccine mandate, that recovery program serves exactly that purpose during this transition. So it is very important for us, in terms of services. We had one of the greatest expansion in innovation in virtual programming. And as a result of that and responding to that, we had a 10,000 tablet program with NYCHA. We just are unfolding and rolling out another 10,000 tablet program with our senior centers, nicely to continue the continuity of virtual programming. So we think that we're at the end of the pandemic. We don't know. And so these provisions give us the opportunity to have some defaults and to continue some of the best practices, I believe. I don't think we'll ever not have virtual programming again. That's how effective it was. You know, so it'll be a combination of both. I think
Now,
I
the
hope that
virtual
addressed-
programming was great. I mean, I think that,
Yeah.
I mean, as you and I talk, we have to see how we can get some of those nice, you know, virtual program on a regular television, you know, public access.
Oh,
So
yes, yes.
yeah,
Forgot-
so not
forgot about that.
everybody to use
Yeah.
a computer will be able to do that. I mean, like Channel 13 has a lot of program, but the city has a public access channels, and we
Yep.
should be able to utilize those also. But I think you can't deliver food virtually, so we just want to make sure that the seniors,
And
who
that's
are
why we have
not
the recovery
going.
program for now. And I think that, you know, I really thank OMB and our deputy mayor for allowing us to even evolve this recovery program for a transition program, for a transition period, precisely because of what you just mentioned, Councilwoman.
So in the recovery program, you're gonna work with contractors that were previously with Get Food? Are they
We're
gonna be the
working
ones?
out some of those details now, but because it would make sense for us in the sense that those particular contractors had, you know, knowledge and had delivery routes. And so to the extent possible, where it makes sense, we would subcontract with those contractors and retain some of them, you know, as long as they are culturally competent and, you know, can meet the religious needs and the cultural, you know, the cultural palette of many of our older adults. We will do our you know, we'll start looking at all of those subcontractors.
Okay. Well,
All
we
those
just,
contractors as possible subcontractors using our network of agencies.
Chair Chin,
I
just
think it's
something
the-
came to
yeah.
mind, Commissioner, while we were talking. Maybe, you know, you had such great success with getting into the homes of seniors. We've seemed to hit like a plateau or a wall with the amount of senior vaccinations. Is there any thought maybe of doing a combined pilot program with maybe DOH for those who may want to entertain the thought of getting a vaccination with a home meal? Maybe the fear or the just ability of getting to some of our over 85 seniors who haven't partaken yet of a vaccination. Maybe there's a way, because there's a trust already with that relationship. Maybe we can partner and do something with the vaccination.
We partnered with the fire department, Department of Health, and our network we had an excellent in-home vaccination program. And I believe that, you know, obviously the demand for that has diminished, but we're looking at that. Is that something that we should, you know, consider building back up? It's never ended, but it's just, you know, do we bring it back up to the, but it's a combination, right? There has to be demand, you know, so that because that is a very labor intensive operation. You know,
Well,
and
maybe-
the fire department were excellent partners in getting a core group of people to do that. Of anyone and what we did was we would vaccinate anybody who was in the home.
Right.
Home attendant, a child, you know, not a child, anybody who was over 12, anybody who was in the home who was eligible for vaccination could get vaccinated during that process. So that was great. And we continue. I mean, our relationship with the Vaccine Command Center, I mean, we've continued to beat the drum on, you know, mobile vaccinations, you know, designating sites, senior sites as even bringing all kind of outreach and activities to get people vaccinated. The Vaccine Command Center and the Department for the Aging have not lacked creativity in trying to get as many people vaccinated over the age of 60, as well as the senior center staff. So, and you know, we're too are concerned about the plateau, which is why we're constantly in conversations with the Department of Health to come up with some kind of remedies or mitigation.
Maybe just a thought, there's such a relationship there with the home delivered meal and the trust, maybe in a non-large, robust plan type thing, but in a quiet winter program, say, listen, while you're getting the meal, we're now offering an additional vaccination if you need it. Who knows? Maybe that'll get us some additional.
Everything and anything is worth the conversation. I agree with you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. I mean, the vaccination program got started slow, but I think it really picked up, and a lot of the senior centers were sites that seniors can get the vaccine and the van. And I think that because we kept pushing, we said, what about the seniors? What about
yes, you did. And before you knew it, we had mobile vans and on-site visits and lots of all of those things.
Yeah, so we will. I don't see, does any other council member have questions?
I see no additional hands raised, Chair.
Okay, I mean, we have other questions that we wanted information on. I guess we'll send you the list.
Okay.
And
we will, and let me know if there get food questions, so that I can direct those to the mayor's office of food security or food policy, and also to the deputy commissioner of sanitation, because they are really responsible for those operations.
Yeah, I mean, we just want to make sure that the seniors know that this program the Get Food program is going to come to a close, and they need to be connected. And I hope that the communication that these seniors are getting are in languages they understand, and not just, robocall in English or English flyer. So we want to make sure that everyone know that if they want to be connected, they can contact their older adult center, 311. I mean, all that information should be in place. And I guess, Commissioner, we will follow up with you on some of the statistics, and we'll try to meet with you again to find out, all the updates of the new centers and the new NORCs.
Right.
And some of them are the ones that are supported or that started by the city council. So we're very happy to see some of them become regular.
Yeah, and redirecting some of those discretionary resources that now are baseline. There is a lot of ways that we could continue the conversation, and I thank you for that. And I just have to mention that OMB has been a good partner during this transition period, and will continue to be a partner, and the discussions are ongoing.
I'm glad they're listening, but we just want to make sure that there's adequate funding for the home delivered meal. 16.6 might not be enough anymore. So we'll continue to work with you to advocate, to make sure that they come through with their promise. Right, Councilmember Chair Malone, right? We're gonna make sure the money gets to DIFTA.
Absolutely. Our mighty tag team is back in full force.
Oh, great. It's got to happen before you leave in that robe. So
yeah. We only have a short period of time, so we got to make it happen. So
thank you.
So Commissioner, thank you for your partnership, and thank you to your team, and Director McKenzie from the Get Food program, and Deputy Commissioner from Sanitation for your hard work on the Get Food program, supporting our senior and people in need. And we just want to make sure that everyone continue to get the services if they still need it. So thank you for testifying today, and have a wonderful day. And we're going to call the next panel.
Great. Thank you all again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, chairs. We will now turn to public testimony. I'd like to remind everyone that, unlike in our typical council hearings, we will be calling individuals one by one to testify. Each panelist will be given 5 minutes to speak. Please begin your testimony once the sergeant has started the timer. Council members who have questions for a particular panelist should use the Zoom raise hand function, and I will call on you in the order that you raised your hand after the panelist has completed their testimony. For panelists, once your name is called, a member of our staff will unmute you, and the Sergeant at Arms will set the timer and then give you the go-ahead to begin. Please wait for the Sergeant to announce that you may begin before delivering your testimony. I would now like to call Carlin Cowan, followed by Tara Klein, and then Caitlin Andrews to testify. Ms. Cowan, you may begin when the Sergeant's call time.
Starting time.
Will the muter please unmute Carlin Cowan? It appears she's had.
You're on mute, Alex.
Thank you. It appears Carlin's having some technical difficulties, as apparently I was too. We will next hear from Tara Klein, and then Caitlin Andrews, and then Kevin Jones, and we will loop back to Carlin Cowan once her technical difficulties are fixed. Ms. Klein, you may begin as soon as the Sergeant's call time.
Starting time.
Great, thank you so much. Chairs for hosting today's really important hearing. My name is Tara Klein. I'm a senior policy analyst with United Neighborhood Houses, a policy and social change organization that represents 44 neighborhood settlement houses, including 40 in New York City. 9 UNH members have home delivered meals contracts, either as contractors or subcontractors. We have many other members with senior centers, and most of our members have served as Get Food enrollers throughout the pandemic. So as the administration prepares for winding down the Get Food program, we really appreciate the opportunity to weigh in on the impact of transitioning these contracts to ensure that homebound older adults are still able to receive meals, including through DFDA's Home Delivered Meals program. First, I want to note that despite some challenges with this administration, Get Food has been a tremendous pandemic program that has helped countless people, especially older adults who face senior center closures and home delivered meals programs that were over capacity. We understand that Get Food funding is running out and enrollment has dropped, so we do need to make some changes. And we appreciate that the city knows we need a strong transition plan to be in place. Above all else, moving forward, we urge the administration to prioritize working with its existing network of nonprofit providers to ensure homebound older adults can continue to receive meals, which includes increased financial support. I'd like to focus a little bit on the Home Delivered Meals program. These programs have been operating continuously throughout COVID-19 while seeing program demand explode. The pandemic really underscored the crucial wraparound supports that Home Delivered Meals clients receive, including case management, regular contact from drivers who are trained on how to work with older adults, and tailored and nutritionally appropriate meals. We know that Get Food does not provide the social supports that many people need, and that home delivered meals is going to be a key component of recovery. However, we also know that home delivered meals programs can't handle all the additional Get Food capacity as they are set up now, without additional financial support. Despite its overwhelming success in maintaining health and nutrition throughout the pandemic and beyond, the Home Delivered Meals program has been significantly underfunded for years, with DFDA contracts failing to cover the full cost of providing those meals. This longstanding underfunding has only been made more acute by the increased demand during COVID-19. Ultimately, this underfunding undercuts the quality and availability of services for the older adults who rely on these meals. I want to talk a little bit about the 1178 figure that we've been talking about today. This number is the average cost for a home delivered meal for urban areas in the United States. This was in 2015, according to a report by Mathematica Policy Research. As we know, DFDA's current across the board rate of $9.58 per meal. That is therefore about 20% below the national average for urban areas, the cost of a meal. Well, we're encouraged today to hear the commissioner mention she's pursuing a $10.52 rate with OMB. It's not enough to meet the need. UNH, along with Live On New York and assistance from Sea Change Capital Partners, has conducted an independent analysis of the true cost of this program and has confirmed that 1178 is actually very close to the actual true cost of a home delivered meal in New York City, though individual rates did vary by provider. This analysis entailed working with current contractors and subcontractors to develop standardized categories and budgets and calculating average costs. It considered raises to minimum wage level staff. And notably, I wanted to raise that New York City's minimum wage is higher than many other urban areas. And that's important to consider when we're talking about scale and costs. The analysis also considered OTPS costs that are generally not included in contracts, like parking tickets and uniforms for staff, as well as indirect costs. UNH has been calling for an additional $16.6 million to be added to the home delivered meals program, which will address longstanding underfunded contracts by increasing the rate to $11.78 per meal, while also meeting that growing program demand that we've seen lately. Additionally, if the city is to truly invest in home delivered meals programs, it must consider existing infrastructure and capital needs, including needs for new vans and vehicle repairs, kitchen equipment that is often breaking down and needs to be repaired and expanded, as well as building repairs like leaking roofs and much more. We know that many of these repairs are slow to receive approval from the city. And the city must consider the human infrastructure that's needed to operate and strengthen these programs. Currently, program staffing is difficult due to low contract rates that necessitate low salaries, yet another reason that contract rates need to be increased. And we remain concerned about transition time as the food winds down with less than a month left. We hope the city will work closely with nonprofit providers to make sure this happens the right way, having conversations to see exactly what those providers need and moving beyond surveys and data. And finally, it's important to remember this is happening in October at the same time as the new Older Adult Center and NORC contracts are still expected to begin. It's news to us today that, as well as to providers, that October 1st is no longer the start date, which is about 11 days away. We appreciate the comments that transition planning is important and remain concerned that doing so even by November 1st is not sufficient. Transitioning these contracts with such a tight turnaround is really close to impossible, especially while responding to the ongoing pandemic and the changing Get Food program. So we reiterate our call that DFTA must delay new contract start dates to allow this type of careful planning. As we know, contracts are currently extended through June 2022, so a start date delay really should not be a problem, even if it stretches beyond this calendar year. So thank you very much. I'm happy to take questions later.
Thank you, Ms. Klein. I'll turn it back to Chair Chin.
Yeah, we've been joined by our borough president, Gail Brewer. So Gail, would you like to speak?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair Chin, and I am outside, so I hope you can hear me. I am very appreciative of you and of Peter Ballone and the committee and the work that you're doing, because it sounds like as a result of this hearing, you're getting lots of answers that we needed. I think you know that we have been focused on this issue of local food for vulnerable and low-income populations all during the pandemic and even before. I do want to thank DFTA Commissioner Lorraine Cortez Vasquez, Kate McKenzie in the Mayor's Office of Food Policy, and of course the former Food Czar Sanitation Commissioner, Kathleen Garcia. I think also, you know, all of the senior centers, the NORCs, and my favorite, Live On New York and United Neighborhood Houses, everybody has been helping. But we know that there are 18,000 older adults, plus an additional 6,000 in Get Food, and I think they still need assistance. And we know that there may be an extension, but a program is scheduled to end October 15th, and that's very, very soon, although I know everybody's working together to figure out the transition. And we know that there are older adults. This is, they call us because they get text or recorded messages about the emergency food distribution ending, but they don't really know about what that means. They worry about unfamiliar phone calls, spam calls, and that's how they're learning about the Get Food closure, or they're learning it through staff, like our staff or your staff. That's not how to do it. So I am concerned, and I think you are also, about how the agencies are divvying up the list of enrollees to notify them about the closure of the program, making sure nobody falls through the cracks. And I think it's the same thing we've been saying all through the pandemic. What is the role of senior centers? We don't want to make the same mistakes of past Get Food transitions, At that point, the senior center staff was excluded from accessing critical member information. And I assume that's not going to happen again, but we all worry. The other issue that you know about is the home delivered meal providers who really are rock stars. But when they were restricted in FY21 and 22 from adding new enrollees to the home delivered meals program, that was a problem. Now these adults are enrolled in the Get Food program, which is ending. So are these adults eligible for home delivered meals? I assume they are. Are they in need of the food and case managers services that the amazing senior centers provide? What's the capacity of the home delivered meal program? And of course, making sure that case management is everywhere, particularly now. We know that the DFT Recovery Meals Program, I never saw so many friggin' acronyms in my life, but that's government, I know. We know that it's projected to serve those needing a better fit than some of the center congregate grab and go and the eat well and some of these other programs. But what is the capacity of the RM program? How can providers be expected to prepare and deliver, and this is what came up earlier, healthy, religiously, and culturally appropriate meals at the reimbursement rate of $9.58. As you heard earlier, and others know better than I, we need $11.78 at a minimum. And then, of course, is the plan for providing the RM and HDM, home delivered meal participants with the weekend and holiday meals. We all love City Meals on Wheels, but they have to be funded to provide those services. And we also have to think about an individual's meal allocation being reduced from 12 meals per week to 5 per week without the investment in weekend meal service, all of which you know. So I'm here to say that we have to figure out also the businesses that were operating as Get Food program vendors, they somehow, in my understanding, they got reimbursed after 2 weeks. We have to make sure that our not-for-profits get the same support. The lesson of this pandemic, if it's nothing else, it's food access, it's access to vaccines, and we know the city can't do it alone. It doesn't happen without a network of trusted not-for-profit partners. And I always think we have the best in the city of New York, but you have to coordinate the planning. We have to make sure that isolated residents aren't lost in the transition. And of course, we have to make sure that they're all funded so that we can be a great place to age. And I thank you so much. And I'm sorry I'm sitting out on a bench.
Well, I'm glad you can join us. And thank you so much, Borough President, always for your advocacy for our older adults. I remember we had conversation in the beginning of the pandemic about how to make sure all the seniors get connected to food and the problem in the beginning. And yeah, so we're gonna continue to work closely with DFTA to make sure that there's adequate funding, and the advocates have talked about the 16.6 million that we need. I don't think that's enough, and this is a good chance for us to really get more because of the number of seniors. And so we're going to continue the advocacy to make sure the resources are there for all the great providers. So thank you, Borough President, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Borough President. Thank you, Chair Chin.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Next, we will hear from Caitlin Andrews, followed by Kevin Jones, and then Carlin Cowan. Ms. Andrews, you may begin when the sergeant's call time.
Starting time.
Hello, my name is Caitlin Andrews. I'm the Director of Public Policy at Live On New York. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and thank you to the Borough President for joining. It's always wonderful to have your voice on these issues. Live On New York's members include more than 100 community-based nonprofits that provide core services to older New Yorkers, including home-delivered meal providers, senior center providers, and case management providers, which are all critical to the success of our nutrition system for older adults. During the COVID pandemic, food insecurity was exacerbated by issues economic as well as access. In response, the city's emergency Get Food program scaled rapidly to meet the growing need for nutritional assistance. Yet this represented a temporary solution to a more systemic hunger problem. Today, Get Food is poised to come to a close, with preparations underway for clients to transition to an alternative or existing meal program. For the more than 16,000 older adults still receiving meals, through Get Food, the success of this transition will be critical to their ability to remain nourished. It's critical that the city go beyond ensuring a short-term continuity of service to instead executing long-term investments aimed at rooting out older adult hunger more holistically. Reaching this goal cannot be done without making immediate and significant investments in the nonprofit home-delivered meal system that is best positioned to make meaningful strides towards this goal. With this in mind, Live on New York recommends the following. Within the November plan, the administration must invest $16.6 million at a minimum to serve existing clients within the home-delivered meal system, as well as much as needed to ensure this rate can also be reflected in the additional clients that providers might take on. Currently, the reimbursement rate for home delivered meals is capped at $9.58, an arbitrary rate that's irreflective of the verified average reimbursement rate for urban areas of $11.78. This rate was determined in 2015. We know costs have gone up since then. So $11.78 is really a baseline of what we need. The current rate creates real challenges, leaving barely enough for providers to offer delivery drivers minimum wage, though they're competing in the same market for drivers as Uber, which pays roughly $48,685 annually. The effect, only a quick search on Indeed will bring you 18 ads currently available for delivery drivers within the city's home delivered meal system. That means many of Live on New York's members are spending time unsuccessfully attempting to hire home delivered meal drivers due to low wages set by government contracts. Those 18 current vacancies represent 18 meal routes that somehow still need to be staffed at a time when these contracts are about to absorb upwards of 16,000 additional clients. Quite simply, not investing in the system is a recipe for disaster. I heard in the earlier testimony that there's discussion between DIPTA and OMB on raising the rate to $10.52. This is a start and towards what we need, and I'm hopeful that this will be realized in the November plan, which is the last opportunity for the administration to move the needle on this issue. In addition, we recommend investments in capital needs, specifically vans. I'm pleased to hear of the 44 replacement vans being purchased, and I'm hopeful that this will be expeditiously executed. In addition, I would estimate that many current contract holders need 2 vans on average to add to their fleet to meet the rising demand, which we know is only going to continue to grow as we have a growing older adult population. We also need expanded investments in case management to ensure all clients can be screened for eligibility to receive this critical service. This is important because traditionally we have a waiting list for case management. Year after year, the City Council, led by Councilmember Chin and Bellone, need to request money to fill the need for waiting lists for case management. And now we have about 18,000 individuals that really should be screened for this service to determine if they should have a case manager long-term. Beyond this, and this is a part of the funding issue, the city must begin including COLAs and inflation factors in all human services contracts. Part of the reasons we're struggling to hire drivers is that we enter into RFPs for contracts that don't include cost of living adjustments as a normal course of business, which means that the city is consciously entering into contracts that will not include raises for a predominantly Black and Brown workforce that it is what makes up our home human services provider system. The recommendations are not nice to have solutions to hypothetical issues. They are the reality of what New York City needs to commit to ensure that no individual opens an
expired
in the richest city of the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. Next, we will hear from Kevin Jones, followed by Carlin Cowan, and then Jeremy Kaplan. Mr. Jones, you may begin when the sergeant's call time.
Start in time.
Good afternoon, Chair Vallone and members of the City Council Committees on Aging and Economic Development. My name is Kevin Jones. I'm the Associate State Director for AARP New York, representing 750,000 members of the 50+ community here in New York City. Thank you for allowing the opportunity for me to testify at today's hearing. Though we all hope that we are moving past the peak of this pandemic, we know that food insecurity across New York City remains high, as does the vulnerability of older New Yorkers. We're grateful to be a part of this conversation about how to bring seniors currently receiving emergency food into the DFTA food programs. We believe that now is the time to think about how long-term food security for seniors can be part of the city's long-term COVID recovery plan. 1 in 5 older adults in New York City lives in poverty, and the rates are much higher among older people of color than older white people. This is the same group that has been disproportionately impacted by the COVID pandemic. In addition, as many of you already know, older adults are one of the fastest growing populations in New York City and will continue to make up a greater share of the city's residents in the coming years. Despite the growing need for aging-related services throughout New York City, DFTA's programs remain chronically underfunded. One of the most important programs to the health of older New Yorkers are DFTA's meal programs, and it is critical the city invest more money in them to expand their capacity. We need, we need the city to not only reach more homebound seniors with their meal delivery program, but to double down on the amount of food that participants receive. Right now, Get Food NYC participants receive about 3 meals a day as a part of their emergency services, but regular meal delivery clients only get 1 meal a day. These are folks who have been determined to, these are folks who have been determined to be unable to feed themselves otherwise for various reasons. The meal delivery is often the only thing they eat each day, which is not enough for those folks whose health is vulnerable. So I also want to mention, I didn't want to list them all, but we also support the budget asks that were referenced by my friends Caitlin and Tara at UNH and Live On New York as well. So I won't go through those, but I want to just overall, in addition to that, urge the city to prioritize funding for senior meal services as we plan for our long-term COVID recovery. And thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Next, we will hear from Carlin Cowan, followed by Jeremy Kaplan, and then Rachel Shiro. Carlin Cowan, you may begin when the sergeant's call time.
Starting time.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Chairs Chin and Vallone and the council members here today for the opportunity to testify. My name is Carlin Cowan, pronouns they and she, and I'm testifying on behalf of CPC, the Chinese American Planning Council. CPC is the nation's largest Asian American social services agency, reaching over 60,000 Asian American immigrant and low-income New Yorkers in all 5 boroughs each year. Over the course of the pandemic, over the course of the last 18 months, CPC has been on the front lines, assisting our community members from relief application assistance to wellness checks and meal deliveries. 70% of our community members have lost jobs or income as reported in our wellness checks, and we have found consistently that food insecurity is the #1 problem reported by our community members. In fact, we found that 33% of our seniors specifically requested food delivery from the city's Get Food NYC program. While this has been an important holdover program, as you have heard from many of the other advocates here, we are very concerned as it comes to a close about making sure that our seniors and indeed all New Yorkers have access to sufficient food that is also culturally competent and meets all of their needs. It is therefore critical that we invest in our nonprofit home delivered meals programs, as well as more robust solutions to address hunger across New York State. CPC is a proud member of both Live On and United Neighborhood Houses, and we support all of the recommendations that have been made by those 2 testimonies today. Home delivered meal programs are not simply just meals that are 70% of our community members' nutritional value for the day, although of course they are that, and primarily and most importantly that. They are also a wellness check to see if community members have other needs, whether it be a COVID outbreak in their home, whether something is going wrong with their physical living facilities, or whether they need help enrolling in other benefits. Our home delivered meals programs are also sometimes the only social interactions that our community members have in the language that they speak during the day or during the week. These are critical programs, and that is why it is so important that they be housed in these nonprofit organizations that have established trust in the communities and are able to connect our community members to other services beyond just the home delivered meals that they have been receiving. Many of our community members, for example, expressed hesitancy in getting services from the city's Get Food program because they were concerned that opening the door for city workers might lead to a contact with ICE that could lead to their deportation. putting our seniors in the position of feeling like they had to choose between getting food and their family's own safety. Of course, that's something that nonprofits can work with community members that they have trust with to express that programs like Get Food are in fact perfectly safe for our community members to take a part of. Community members also reported that they were receiving meals that were not nutritionally appropriate for them or culturally appropriate for them, which is again why it's critical that home delivered meals come from nonprofits that are able to deliver culturally competent meals that meet the needs of our community members. And in addition to making sure that these meal programs are sufficient in terms of each individual community member's needs, we actually need to make sure that their investments are significant enough to meet hunger needs across the city for all of our seniors and in fact, all of our community members. Over the past 18 months, CPC has, in addition to the meals that we have already delivered through city contracts, delivered almost 500,000 pounds of fresh food and 200,000 pounds of meals that we worked with other small businesses, nonprofits, and individual donors to source. What this ultimately means is that we're not doing it just because we care about our community members, because we do, of course, but that there's a need in our community beyond what city investments are providing for, that nonprofits have to make up on top of what is already underfunded within our organizations. So when we think about the investments that are needed in home delivered meals and senior services programs, it needs to be even more to make up for all of the meal delivery and all of the food security work that is happening that is not even being funded by the city right now. So I know you've already heard these recommendations from both our allies at Live On and UNH, but just to quickly review, we want to make sure that the administration invests at least $16.6 million to serve clients within the traditional home delivered meal program in the November plan, to make sure that funding for those contracts happens at the higher rate in order to ensure that there is continuity, and to make a $3.6 million capital investment in van purchases. Right now, we have vans sitting in lots that we cannot afford to repair, and we're delivering meals on foot. These are absolutely critical to make sure these investments happen in the November plan, because our community members cannot wait for food support. It is urgent, and it is literally a matter of life for them. So thank you so much, council members, for your work on this, and we appreciate the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you, Ms. Cowan. Next, we will hear from Jeremy Kaplan, followed by Rachel Shuro and Shubhra Datta. Mr. Kaplan, you may begin when the sergeant's call time.
Starting time.
Good afternoon, council members, and thank you, Chairs Chin and Vallone. My name is Jeremy Kaplan, and I am the Executive Director of Encore Community Services, a nonprofit serving seniors on Manhattan's West Side. Encore is a home delivered meals provider funded through DFTA and City Meals on Wheels. And between that and our senior center, we provide over 500,000 meals to older New Yorkers each and every year. Even before the pandemic, 1 in 4 older adults living at home were nutritionally at risk. And then COVID created a crisis uniquely devastating for seniors and exacerbated food insecurity across the city. We were extremely glad to hear that the city extended Get Food NYC through recovery meals. Continuing the program into 2022 creates a longer transition period for the many thousands of seniors currently receiving emergency food. That said, we believe the city must take this time to plan for long-term recovery and further reduce food insecurity among older New Yorkers. This will require significant and long-term investment, including additional funding for DFTA, which we all know is one of the lowest city-funded agencies. It will require improved flexibility with contracts, an emergency food plan to ensure that all older adults have uninterrupted access to food. The city needs to invest more money in meals for older New Yorkers who are not able to cook for themselves. Not only are there people who we are not yet reaching, we desperately need to expand food access for seniors who are already receiving services. DFTA meal delivery clients are only allocated 1 meal per day. Get Food was 3. And it's often the only meal that they're going to eat. While those meals are nutritious and high quality, 1 meal just is not enough. For Encore and other organizations to truly meet the nutritional needs of seniors, we need the city to make capital investments, including new vans. By the way, it takes over a year for a van to get procured right now because of the backlogs. Funding to rent space to cook and store more meals, and flexibility to reimburse for the full need. As a city, we need to be more nimble in response to the next emergency. It is often seniors who are the most vulnerable. One way we can do this is with more flexibility in city contracts to expand to meet the short and long-term needs. With more flexibility in infrastructure, our city's senior service providers, rather than for-profit vendors, could have provided emergency food services all throughout the pandemic. Encore, as do all of our home delivered meal providers, stand ready to collaborate with the city to address senior hunger. We hope the city considers these investments. Thank you to the council members for your time today.
Thank you, Mr. Kaplan. Next, we will hear from Rachel Shuro, followed by Shubhra Datta. Ms. Shuro, you may begin when the sergeant's call time.
Starting time.
Thank you. My name is Rachel Shuro, and I'm the Associate Executive Director at City Meals on Wheels. And I'd like to begin by thanking you for holding this important hearing, although I am left with more questions now than when I woke up this morning. Home delivered meals is essential in ensuring at least one nutritious meal a day is available to consume. Reliance on home delivered meals has only increased since the pandemic and has reassured many new recipients that they're not forgotten and will have food. With the end of the Get Food New York City program and a continuation of services only through the end of the fiscal year, what do we think will happen July 1st, 2022? Will people who are hungry the day before be satiated in the new fiscal year, able to access food when necessary, the right kind of food they need? We must look at this moment as an opportunity to support aging services and food service in particular. Home delivered meals has been a successful safety net for tens of thousands of older New Yorkers throughout the city. Why not expand the service to more of those in need? We know they're out there. The pandemic only highlighted this fact for us. The city must invest in the infrastructure, technology, wages, and their own Department of the for the Aging in order to be able to serve in a proactive and considered way. This system has been reactive for decades, and while not-for-profits have collected pennies on the dollars to do this work, there is a breaking point. The pandemic also highlighted this fact. People who have been on the front lines are burned out. They're dealing with their own marginalization. As a society, we need to do better, much better. Invest in home delivered meals and other aging services in a really significant way, starting with increasing the reimbursement rate to at least $11.70 per meal. Ensuring that our meal recipients have food throughout the week is what the partnership between City Meals and the Meals on Wheels provider network does. Without City Meals, tens of thousands of currently over 20,000 folks would no longer receive meals on weekends, holidays, or in times of emergency. City Meals, as a not-for-profit, will continue to work hard to raise private dollars in order to try to meet the needs of our partners and our recipients in the years to come. However, we also desperately need the support of our partners in city government to help us reach all of those consistently in need without a disruption in service. This kind of partnership is even more crucial during times of uncertainty or when facing potential crises like COVID or Hurricane Ida and climate change. We hope you, our partners in city government, will help us to continue to advocate on behalf of those who are often forgotten and marginalized and demand increased support for senior services and emergency meals funding for City Meals on Wheels. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shuro. Next, we will hear from Shubhra Datta. As a reminder, if you have not testified and still wish to do so, please raise your hand in the Zoom raise hand function. Ms. Shubhra Datta, you may begin when the sergeant's call time.
Oh, we also been joined by Councilmember Eugene.
Starting time.
Good afternoon. I want to thank Chair Margaret Chin, Chair Paul Bellone, and members of the Committee of Aging for giving the opportunity to India Home to testify today. I am Shubhra Datta from India Home, Program Manager. India Home is the largest nonprofit organization dedicated to serving New York City's South Asian older adults. Since the beginning of the pandemic, we have been providing culturally competent halal home delivered meals to the seniors across Eastern and Southeastern Queens. With DAFTA funding, we are able to continuously provide meals without a gap, without a limitation, and seniors have been dependent on these meals as a regular part of their routine. With the growing South Asian population in the city, this has been an essential need for the community's older adult population. Our clients have appreciated these meals and their nutritional value, and many tell us that this is the only nutritious meal they have access to in a given day. Though there are delays in the contracts and reimbursements of our discretionary funding in the last fiscal year, we were able to provide over 17,000 home delivered meals to roughly 300 unique individuals, unique older adults, and a total of over 21,000 home delivered meals until now. Earlier this year, we were quickly directed to open our centers at limited capacity with strict COVID-19 restrictions. Our seniors were eager to return, and we created a system through which, given the capacity restrictions as well as the amount of people that we can allow in the center, we were feeding as many people as possible through the grab and go meal service as well as the home delivery service. Currently, we are running 4 centers in Jamaica, Ozone Park, Jamaica Estates, and Kew Gardens for 5 days a week. All these locations provide halal delivered meals or Hindu vegetarian meals, as well as breakfast. Until now, we have provided over 3,500 grab and go meals to our centers across Queens. Our seniors have provided, depend on us for this culturally competent and healthy food that we have been providing. We were also not contracted to provide home delivered meals at the beginning and never provided them prior to the pandemic. But given the need, we created the capacity and made it happen. We have seen that providing 1 meal per day, 3 times a week, have made differences for a lot of our seniors. Seniors like Mr. Khan, who I was speaking to a few weeks ago, he's a disabled, unemployed individual and fully dependent on these cooked meals for these 3 days, or he has to go to food pantries to find food for himself. It is seniors like Mr. Khan that we continue to go above and beyond and provide both home delivered meals and grab and go meals to ensure that no senior is left behind in the city. Without funding available, we would not be able to accomplish what we have done so far, including serving over 800 unique seniors with the unique emergency meal services and 25,000 home delivered meals. So we need continued and increased support to make sure that our program stays as we're doing at this point. We are dependent on the discretionary funding from DAFTA for the funding and to provide all these meals. While our work has been focused primarily in Queens, with the funding and continuation of this funding, we hope to expand the services to communities and other boroughs as well. Please help us continue this emergency need assistance for these seniors, and hopefully we'll be able to move forward with those seniors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Datta. Once more, I would just like to say if there is a panelist who still wishes to testify but has not had an opportunity to do so, please use the Zoom raise hand function now. Seeing no hands raised, I'll turn it back to the chairs for closing remarks.
Before I close, I do have a couple of questions for the panel. Thank you all for your testimony and your advocacy all these years. And you're the service provider that's been tremendous, during this pandemic. And we just want to make sure that as we transition out of the Get Food program, that none of the seniors will get lost. So I know that we've been advocating for that 16.6 and we just didn't get it. We're not going to give up because, as I said earlier, when we talk with the administration and OMB, they just didn't get it. They just think that, senior center is going to be opening, seniors will be able to go back and get their congregate meals. It's like, this is homebound seniors. That's what home delivered meal is about. It's for homebound senior, and we need that extra money. I was also glad to hear that the commissioner said they're looking at, increasing the rate to $10.52. So I think we need to get them up a little bit more with OMB. And I don't think 16.6 is enough. So I would appreciate, some of the advocates, Tara and Kathleen, talk to the service provider and see, what additional funding we should be advocating for. For the longest time, I really don't understand why it's only one meal a day. And that's why, and only 5 days a week. And that's why in the council, we had fought to have an initiative for the 6 meals program added. And I think it was picked up by the administration later on. It was Councilmember Koska was the lead on that initiative. So I think going forward, we always compare that Get Food, there's 3 meals a day, and then home delivered meal is still only 1 meal a day. So I think we need to really continue to advocate on that. And I have a question for the provider. I think, Jeremy, when you were talking, can you just maybe go a little bit further in terms of your capacity? Are you the prime contract for home delivered meal in your area, or are you a subcontractor? Oh, can we unmute Jeremy, Sergeant?
Looks unmuted, Chair. There we go.
Thank you, Chair Chin, for the question. Yes, Encore is the lead contractor for CDs 4, 5, and 7. The question was go a little bit deeper into our capacity. Encore currently has the capacity with little to no infrastructure enhancements to increase the number of meals that we're preparing and delivering by about give or take 500 meals a day. That would be possible if the cap on our contract, our home delivered meals contract, were lifted by that amount. With additional infrastructure investments, we of course would be able to go beyond that, and those infrastructure investments would require, as I mentioned, vans, space to store meals, and of course staffing.
During the pandemic, did DFTA talk with you about increasing your capacity, the home delivered meal?
There were conversations early on in the early days of the pandemic back in April of 2020. Encore went from cooking and delivering for about 1,100 homebound seniors a day to 1,600 a day. And we made that transition in about a week in direct response to the calls that we were getting. There were conversations about lifting the capacity, but then the Get Food program was initiated, and so it all went over to the Department of Sanitation.
So you didn't get the support that if you have gotten the support, you would have been able to continue.
We would have been able to continue at least those additional 500 folks a day prior to Get Food launching.
But then you didn't get the funding or the resources. It just say, oh, send those clients over to Get Food.
Yes, that is correct.
So DFTA just asked you to sign those, the 500 or so seniors to the Get Food program.
Well, there was natural attrition that happened. So we allow for natural attrition, and some of those folks that dropped off of the program transitioned over to Get Food. I don't know the number of folks that went over to Get Food from that attrition, but I would imagine that it was quite high.
Yeah, because the sense we were getting from the administration and also from DFTA was that they really don't want to kind of touch the home delivered meal program because it was functioning, and with all this increased demand, they just didn't want to mess with it. And that's how it kind of like went over to Get Food, which is unfortunate. I mean, we kept saying that if you were given the provider the support and the money that they need, they would have the capacity to expand. But that didn't happen.
I agree, and I think we're in that moment now where we have that opportunity again. because there are 10,000 people now who we're estimating are going to continue with the program. And we know that many of them are going to qualify for home delivered meals. And so the time to make that infrastructure investment is right now. And we know what those infrastructure needs are across the network, as Caitlin will surely tell you.
Yes. Well, that's what we're going to be, advocating for. And I think with the rate increase, I think what we also heard is from the subcontractor. Because, if they're not the prime contractor and they're the subcontractor, they get even less reimbursed money. So I think it's really critical that we increase that rate, because oftentimes the subcontractor are the one that's also doing the culturally, sensitive meals and have the capacity of really reaching a more diverse population of seniors. So that is something that we hope, will be improved upon. So I know that as Caitlin and Tara mentioned, the November plan is really the last opportunity in this budget to really push. So we definitely will be working on to make sure that we get the increased funding for the home delivered meal. I think for the capital need, that should be easier. But definitely getting the 16.6 and more. This is a good time to push. We had not stopped pushing for the 16.6 since the adoption of the budget. Every chance we get, we're still pushing on that. So we're going to seize this opportunity to continue to do that.
Well, thank you, Councilwoman. And we know that you are one of our biggest advocates in the sector, so we appreciate that.
You're welcome. I think this budget, we got to that 0.5% of the city's budget, right? Before it was always less than 0.5%. I think we finally got to the 0.5% mark, and maybe a little bit more than 0.5%. So I think that's really good. And I think the other accomplishment that we were able to do through this budget was also increase mental health services for our senior. That's a lot more funding that we were able to allocate. And I think with the new RFP, the increased number of older adult center, our senior center and North program, I think that is something that we should be very proud of. And thank you to all of you for your advocacy. And I really urge you to continue, because we got to make sure it happened in the November plan, that this additional money is added. So what you can do on your end will be greatly appreciated. Councilmember Below? Yeah. Oh. Chair Below, do you have some closing remarks?
I think the chair is muted. Let me just try and unmute him here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, apologies. There we go. Oh, Chair, you're muted again.
I am so sorry. I'm multitasking on figuring out what time to pick up my son. Thank you, Chair. It has been, I have no questions for these great panels, but I do thank them for all their amazing work, because as you always says, we learn through their advice and through their testimony. That's how we develop our legislation and our budgets. But thank you very much.
Okay. Once again, thank you to all of you for testifying. And I know that's congratulations to India House of getting more funding. And I heard from the commissioner, I don't have all the detail, but she couldn't share at the hearing. But some of the North program and the Senior Center for Immigrant Population that the council has been funding all this year did get into the award, for the new RFP. So I think that's something that we're very, very proud of, because that's what we did with the initiative. We want to get them started and we want to get them into DFTA's portfolio. And we heard that some of them did make it. So I think that's really great. And Rachel, thank you for the City Meals on Wheels. We got to continue to advocate and make sure it is 7 days, at least, to start. So thank you again for being here today, and thank you for all your work for our older adult population. So with that, our hearing is adjourned. Thank you to all the sergeants for your help.
The recording is ended. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you to all the sergeants. Thank you, Paul. Have a wonderful day.